Some cults promise peace, faith, or freedom. Others twist those ideas into nightmares. What begins as guidance turns into control. Minds break, families vanish, and blind devotion replaces human will. In this iceberg, we start with the strange and climb down to the most horrifying groups ever built. The ones that erased empathy itself. 7 levels, each colder, darker, and more real than the last. Let's begin. Level 1, the uneasy surface, Heaven's Gate. In the 1990s, a small group in California believed they were preparing for a higher level of existence. Their leaders, Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, told them that human bodies were only temporary, like containers waiting to be upgraded. When the Hale-Bopp comet appeared in 1997, they believed it was their sign to leave Earth behind. 39 members dressed in matching black clothes and sneakers. They drank poison calmly, covered themselves with purple cloths, and lay down together, believing they were about to ascend to a new world. The most haunting thing about Heaven's Gate isn't just the mass death. It's the peace on their faces, the quiet order of it. No chaos, no fear, just faith. The scene feels more like a ritual than a tragedy. Psychologically, it strikes at something deep, our fear of being small in a vast universe. Applewhite gave his followers what every lost person wants: purpose. He told them they mattered, and that death was only the beginning. In return, they gave him everything, even their lives. And yet, Heaven's Gate was only the surface, the calm face of something much darker. Because when belief turns into control and faith becomes a weapon, what begins as salvation can end in ruin. Level 2, the manipulated faith. The Buddha Field cult. At first, the Buddha Field looked like a peaceful spiritual group: yoga, meditation, and love. Its leader, a former ballet dancer named Michel, called himself the Teacher. He told his followers that he could bring them closer to enlightenment if they just trusted him. But trust can be dangerous. Over time, members gave up their independence. They stopped talking to outsiders. They accepted strange rituals. Michel controlled everything: their emotions, their beliefs, even their bodies. Some followers later said he used spiritual power as a mask for emotional and sexual abuse. The scariest part? Most of them didn't even realize they were being controlled. Psychologically, Buddha Field shows how soft control works. There were no chains or violence, just warmth, community, and a leader who made you feel seen. Michel didn't trap people with fear. He used love like a cage. It felt safe, even comforting, until it wasn't. It's easy to imagine ourselves as too smart to fall for a cult. But sometimes the most dangerous groups don't look like monsters. They look like family. Because when faith becomes controlled, the line between belief and blindness disappears. But what happens when the family falls apart and the group starts eating itself from the inside? Let's go deeper into a cult where love turned into fear and connection became control. Level 3, the broken community. The Family International, formerly Children of God. This cult began with messages of peace and love. But under the surface, something much darker was spreading. The leader, David Berg, preached that sexuality was a divine gift and twisted that idea into something horrifying. Adults were encouraged to engage in sharing as an act of worship, even involving children. Victims grew up being told their trauma was sacred. From the outside, it may seem impossible to imagine how something so evil could be accepted. But inside the group, abuse was wrapped in holy language. Survivors say the worst part wasn't just what happened, it was being told it was right. Psychologically, this created a fracture that never fully heals. When a child is hurt and then told to smile through it, to call it love, they learn to distrust themselves. Pain becomes normal. Reality gets blurred. And even years later, many struggle with deep confusion. Did they believe it? Were they complicit? Who can they trust now? This cult didn't just destroy boundaries. It destroyed the very tools people use to understand love, safety, and truth. That damage doesn't go away. But what happens when belief itself becomes the weapon? Not just against outsiders, but against the soul. The next level takes us deeper into twisted devotion, where worship turns violent and faith becomes fuel for cruelty. Level 4, the corrupted faith. The Branch Davidians. In the early 1990s, David Koresh told his followers he was the final prophet. To them, he wasn't just a preacher, he was a voice from God. Inside their Texas compound, they built a world apart, ruled by his visions of the apocalypse. Every decision, every belief belonged to him. When federal agents surrounded the compound in 1993, Koresh warned his followers that the end had come. For 51 tense days, families prayed and waited as the standoff grew unbearable. Then fire swept through the buildings, consuming everything. 76 people, including children, died inside, their faith unshaken until the very end. What makes this tragedy so disturbing isn't just the violence, but the psychology behind it. Koresh didn't force obedience, he replaced reality. Inside the compound, the outside world was the enemy. Fear of sin, guilt, and divine punishment became tools of control. And when isolation and belief merge, even death can feel like destiny. Psychologically, it reveals how the need for purpose can destroy reason. The followers weren't chasing power or money, they were chasing meaning. And when that meaning collapsed, they chose fire over doubt. The image of smoke rising over Waco still lingers as a warning of what happens when one man's word becomes sacred law. But some groups didn't wait for the world to end. They tried to bring it about themselves. Where belief meets violence and faith becomes a weapon, the line between worship and war disappears. Level 5, the engine of violence, Aum Shinrikyo. In the 1980s and 90s, a Japanese cult called Aum Shinrikyo began attracting doctors, scientists, and college graduates. Their leader, Shoko Asahara, promised salvation, but only through him. His teachings mixed Buddhism, doomsday prophecies, and science fiction. He warned that the world was ending and that violence would be the only way to cleanse it. On a spring morning in 1995, Aum members boarded Tokyo subways and quietly released sarin gas, a deadly nerve agent. 13 people died. Thousands were injured. The attack stunned the world, not only for its brutality, but for who carried it out. Intelligent, educated people who believed they were saving humanity. That's the deepest horror. These weren't wild-eyed fanatics. They were trained professionals who fully believed that mass murder was a spiritual duty. This is what psychologists call moral inversion, when your sense of right and wrong gets flipped inside a closed system. In Aum, mercy meant death, doubt meant betrayal, and killing strangers became an act of higher love. What makes it psychologically disturbing isn't just the gas or the bodies, but how far belief can stretch when it's used as a weapon. A system like that doesn't just twist reality, it erases it. But some cults go even further. They don't just prepare for death, they worship it. Level 6, the cult of death. The Manson family. In the late 1960s, Charles Manson gathered a group of young, lost people and gave them a new identity, not as individuals, but as his family. Many were searching for meaning in a time of war, change, and cultural chaos. Manson offered answers, but only on his terms. He filled their heads with talk of an upcoming race war, a battle only they would survive. Through drugs, music, and isolation, he slowly erased their sense of self. His control wasn't based on fear, it was based on belonging. Once his followers stopped thinking for themselves, they followed his orders without question. Then came the murders. Actress Sharon Tate and several others were brutally killed in their homes. What shocked the public wasn't just the violence, it was how calm the killers were. They smiled. They believed they were helping the world. Psychologically, this is the collapse of personal identity. Manson replaced every I with we. And once that happens, the moral compass breaks. These weren't heartless people. They were people who no longer saw themselves at all. But what happens when violence isn't hidden by belief, but embraced for its own sake? When destruction becomes the doctrine? We now enter the final layer, level 7, the abyss, the order of the 9 angles. At the darkest end of this iceberg is a group that doesn't just distort belief, it destroys it. Born in Britain, the Order of the 9 Angles blends occult rituals with violent extremism. It doesn't promise peace, healing, or salvation. Instead, it praises harm, chaos, and cruelty as spiritual tools. Members are taught that personal growth comes from acts of brutality. Some of their texts openly encourage assault, sacrifice, and infiltration of other radical groups. While their numbers are small, their ideas have inspired real-world crimes, from stabbings to terror plots. This is where belief turns cold, not because people were fooled, but because they chose to embrace darkness. In cult psychology, we often talk about love being manipulated, but here, love is absent. The goal isn't belonging, it's destruction, and that's what makes it so deeply disturbing. A system built not to heal, but to harm, not as a mistake, but as its main purpose. It's not a loss of humanity, it's the rejection of it. But even at this depth, there's one truth we can't ignore. Cults don't always wear robes or hide in forests. They can hide in wellness retreats, YouTube channels, or quiet online forums. They evolve with the times. New names, new tools, same deep hunger. What makes them dangerous isn't just what they teach. It's how they speak to the parts of us that feel lost. They promise purpose, love, or clarity. But in return, they ask you to stop thinking, to doubt yourself, to trust only them. Psychologically, cults speak to our basic human need, to feel seen, to feel like we belong. But when that need is manipulated, the line between connection and control disappears. And here's the most disturbing truth. No one joins a cult. They join something that finally feels right, until it slowly takes everything away. If you've made it to the bottom of this iceberg, remember, real peace doesn't ask you to give up your mind. It helps you find it.